Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from the 40 principles of the religion, 40 fundamentals. الأربعين في أصول الدين by Imam Al-Ghazali رحمه الله ونفعنا بعلوم في الدارين آمين آمين آمين. And we have reached in our reading to this subtitle: ostentation can be clear, hidden, and more imperceptible than a crawling ant. And it must be that the translator had the more imperceptible than a crawling ant from a different manuscript. That's extra. Note that some ostentation is clear, some of it is hidden, and some of it is more imperceptible than a crawling ant. As for the clear, it is what motivates a person to act. If it were not for that motivation, the person would have no desire to do it. Meaning that you do what you do to impress people, so definitely it's not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it really becomes that the motivation. As for the hidden, it is for an act not to be done solely for the sake of some outer motivation, but for an act to become easier and the energy for it to increase. Like if someone regularly prays every night, but if he had a guest, he would increase his energy. He would pray longer. I think this is imams might be, all of us, we are tested. Yeah. There is no need for my comment. Something more hidden than this is that a person does not increase his energy. However, if someone were to see him praying at night before he finished or immediately afterwards, he would be happy for it and find some excitement within himself. Again, if someone were to see him praying at night before he finished or immediately afterwards, he would be happy for it and find some excitement within himself. This indicates that ostentation was concealed in the depths of his heart, as fire is concealed under ashes, such that happiness seeped out of him upon the realization that someone had seen him, although he was unaware of it before this. Even more hidden than this is that a person is not happy when another sees him. However, he expects the other to initiate the greeting of peace and stand at attention for him, is astounded by someone being rude to him, and shows no toleration or respect in his dealings. This indicates that he feels that he has some status over people because of his deeds. Thus, it is as if he expects their respect and reverence due to his worship, despite this being hidden from them. No one is devoid of these hidden ills except the persistently truthful ones. All of it is sin, and the nullification of good deeds is to be feared as a result of it. Of course, there is no harm in a person feeling joy at another seeing him if his joy is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's manifestation or manifesting the good in him and concealing the bad, when he himself had intended to conceal both of these. Thus, he rejoices in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's benevolence towards him. Likewise, he rejoices because Allah has given him the good news that wherever he does good towards him in this world, he will also do the same for him in the afterlife. He may also rejoice in the fact that the one who sees him takes him as an example, obeys Allah due to being motivated by him. The sign of this is that he also finds joy if that other person sees someone else whom he may hopefully take as an example. This reminds me that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, though they were many, a few of them were scholars per se. And they will talk of them as the fuqaha. Uh, if someone would ask them a question, they would refer him to another companion. And that will be really smart if someone is asked today, not really, if not if he is asked a question or about ablution or so. If you talk about question that is related to financial issues, complex financial issues, riba is haram, but there are complex issues. He might say it was so and so is specialized. You don't have to have an answer for everything. And I think that these TV programs that put the scholar on the spot when you are asked live don't really feel pressure to give an answer if you don't have ready, one ready. Say, I have to research this, I have to refresh my memory, I have to see whether there's anything new on the topic, etc. Due to the hidden nature of the doors to ostentation and its severity in overcoming the inner self, those earnest about their religion conceal their worship and struggle against their egos. Ali radiallahu anhu said, Ali bin Abi Talib, that is, truly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to the Quran reciters on the day of resurrection, were market prices not discounted for you? Were you not the ones to whom greetings of peace were initiated? Were your needs not fulfilled? You have no reward, for you have already exhausted it. If you desire sincerity, you must struggle earnestly for people to be like dumb animals and children when it comes to you. While worshipping, you should not sense any difference between their presence, their absence, their knowledge of your worship, or their heedlessness of it. You should be satisfied with Allah's subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge alone and seek your reward from Him. For indeed, He does not accept anything but sincerity, so that you do not prevent yourself from His beneficence when you need Him most. I think there's a story about people that they might call crazy, but sometimes they say words of wisdom, or they may reflect on an issue in a very wise way. So so there was a congregational group, a congregational prayer in the open and the outside. So some men were praying when this crazy, I'm using the word because the lack of this person who was accused or described as being crazy was running, and he passed by them, and he was still around when they finished the prayer. And they, after the end of the prayer, they looked at him. They told him, "Why didn't you pray with us?" First of all, if he's really crazy, then he doesn't have to pray. You, ch- children are not really required. Crazy people are not required. Like it's not really registered against them on their account. And the third one is someone who faints, passes out. You might say someone who really goes through very lengthy surgery. I just happened to be in close contact with surgeons who perform sometimes, an 8 hours surgery or even more. I literally I knew of one surgery that it took much more, um, some 16 hours. And the person who is really who goes through the surgery, you know, is not really breaking the law by not praying, because there is no way she could. But going back to this person who was told, "Why didn't you pray with us?" And he told them, "Do repeat your prayer," meaning that your prayer was a defect because they were not paying attention to their own prayer. They were paying attention to him running around, and that's really people should not really be distracted. They should be really into their prayer and not really look around for what's going on. And you struggle really to avoid to be in such a position of distraction. You should be satisfied with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge alone and seek your reward from Him, for indeed He does not accept anything but sincerity, so that you do not prevent yourself from His beneficence when you need Him most. Judging the occurrence of ostentation. Perhaps you say, "I'm not able to extricate myself from the hidden ostentation that you have described, though I am able to do so regarding obvious ostentation. Is my worship correct despite this?" Know that ostentation occurs either at the first instance of a deed, during the deed, or after finishing the deed. What occurs with the start of a deed nullifies it and precludes its validity if it was the motivating factor that influenced the act. Instead, the initial undertaking of an act must be sincere. The deed is only nullified if ostentation is the motivating factor for the action. However, if, for example, there is no ulterior motive until immediately after having begun the action, then I am of the opinion, and knowledge is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, then I am of the opinion that the basis of the prayer, for example, is correct. Rather, the merit of immediately focusing on Allah is lost, and the person is obedient by seeking to be seen. He has nevertheless fulfilled his obligation. As for ostentation that occurs within prayer, if it nullifies the true motivation for prayer, then it nullifies the prayer. An example of this is that a person brings an item to the prayer and remembers that he forgot some part of it. Had he been alone, he would have cut short his prayer. However, he finishes the prayer out of shyness before people. This person does not fulfill his obligation because his intention has been discontinued and thus his motivation for worship is also discontinued. It may be that a person's intention has not been discontinued, yet his motivation has become obscured and dominated, such as if a group of people attend and his heart is overcome by joy at them seeing him, such that the original motivation for worship becomes obscured. In that case, what is most probably, in my opinion, is that if he has performed a unit of prayer and his original motivation does not return to him, his prayer is ruined. This is because we extend the obligation of intention at the beginning of the prayer to whatever comes after it, on the condition that nothing has occurred which, had it happened at the beginning, would have rendered the prayer invalid. If this motivation for worship was not obscured, but he merely felt some happiness that did not affect his deed, rather, it affected his beautification of the prayer only, then the most probable likelihood, in my opinion, and Allah is more knowledgeable, is that his prayer is not ruined and he has fulfilled his obligation. As for ostentation that occurs after the prayer, such as mentioning his deed, happiness that people know about it, and desiring to be seen, this does not fall under what has been mentioned. Nevertheless, such a person is obedient, or disobedient rather, and has committed a sin, and his punishment will be commensurate to his intention and to the degree to which he shows off. Whenever he finds an occasion to mention his worship, whether explicitly or implicitly, then it indicates that ostentation was hidden within the core of his ego. فذلك يدل على أن الرياء كان خفيا في باطنه. Treating ostentation by examining its motivating causes. If you know the reality of ostentation and the abundance of its inroads, then it is upon you to exert yourself in treating it. Its treatment is repelling the motivating cause behind it, which are three: love of praise, fear of censure, and greed. As for love of praise, it is like the one who presses forward to the front line of battle in order for it to be said that he is brave, or shows his acts of worship in order for it to be said that he is pious. Its treatment is the same as the treatment for love of status, which is for a person to know that it is an imaginary perfection that has no reality to it. The specific treatment with regards to ostentation is for a person to affirm to himself the harm that it contains. Indeed, even sweet tasting honey would be easy to forego if one knew that there was poison in it. In fact, even if it's not really poison, I have an example of honey that I could not really eat. Uh, it seems that it was wild honey, but obviously it was extracted by using gasoline. Like probably they had some small like it could be a cloth, drenched in gasoline and was set on fire so that, and ultimately only to make smoke. And we know that uh, that smoke, that gasoline was stuck to the honey itself. Uh, I couldn't eat it. Yes, it's honey, but that's the flavor was full with gasoline. But here Imam Ghazali says it's poisonous. One should pay attention to that which spoils, that which basically destroys. Poison destroys. Poison works in more than one way physiologically, but here the metaphorical poison could just do that. He should therefore affirm to himself that on the day when he is most in need of his good deeds, he will be told because of his ostentation, O sinful one, O misguided one, you mocked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, paid attention to his slaves, loved them, loved the slaves, bought their praise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's censure. And sought their pleasure by angering him, angering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he pleased peoples and he angered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was there no one more worthless to you than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I mean, the text in Arabic is beautiful to read, really. أنه يقال له في يوم فقره بسبب ريائه يا فاجر يا غاوي استهزأت بالله عز وجل وراقبت العباد وتحببت إليهم واشتريت حمدهم بذنب الله تعالى وطلبت رضاهم بسخطه أما كان أحد أهون عليك من الله تعالى. This is shame. If there were nothing except this humiliation and embarrassment, shame, it would be sufficient prevention from ostentation. Like if one could think about the humiliation and the embarrassment and the shame, how then could it not be sufficient when added to it there is punishment and the nullification of worship? And when the scale of a person's bad deeds may preponderate after comparison with the scale of his good deeds, and thus be the cause of his destruction. If you affirm to yourself that the pleasure of people is an end that you will never reach, and that whoever seeks the pleasure of people by angering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually angers them, then how can one abandon the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something which there is no prospect of attaining? As for the second motivation, which is fear of censure, one should affirm to himself that people censor will not harm him if his deed is praiseworthy according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, why would one subject himself to Allah's censor and loathing out of fear of the creation's censor? It suffices one to know that people would despise him if they knew the intended ostentation within him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuses not to expose his secret so that his hypocrisy would be known. Thus, the people would loathe him as well after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's loathing. If, on the other hand, he were sincere and turned his heart away from them, looking toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exclusively, then his sincerity to him would be exposed and they would love him. As for the motivation of greed, it is repelled through knowing that it is an imaginary matter, whereas missing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure is complete. It is also repelled through knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who subjugates hearts, and that Whoever is covetous of the creation is never bereft of degradation, lowliness, and subservience, whereas whoever turns away from covetousness of the creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala suffices him and subjugates their hearts for him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is also universal. لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ. It's their guidance is not up to you. Your role is to deliver the message. That's basically the prophetic role. Uh, but whether one accepts Islam or not is not up to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will soften the hearts, and He chooses whomever He wills to accept Islam. If one brings to mind the pleasure of the afterlife at its highest levels and knows that all that will pass him by as a result of ostentation, his heart turns away from the creation, his aspiration is reinforced, the lights of sincerity shine upon him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aids and enables him. Treating the sudden occurrence of ostentation. Perhaps you say, I have affirmed all of this for myself, and my heart is opposed to ostentation. However, maybe an occasion of ostentation will come up and assault me unexpectedly in some acts of worship when the creation sees me. So, what is the treatment in the case of this assault of ostentation? Know that the foundation of this treatment is that you hide your acts of worship just as you hide your immoral acts. For in this is sincerity. Um, you hide, of course, you hide what could be hidden. Nobody should know. Nobody should know that you prayed, extra prayers, like a vigil at night, like the qiyam, as we say. Nobody should know. That's uh, nobody should know that you are fasting. I mean, Imam Ghazali, he, of course, time and again in more than one book, obviously, in Ihya Ulumuddin and here in the 40 principles, 40 fundamentals, he mentions how the advice of Jesus Christ, peace upon him, that if you are fasting, just put some oil on your hair. And what he means is that we said this could be like gel today, but have a shower just before you go out, look very refreshed, put whatever something, just look very refreshed, and don't act and don't appear as if so that people will tell you, are you fasting? And you might answer about a different fasting. Are you fasting? You might just simply joke. Fasting is just saum, um, in the sense of abstinence from talking. No, because Maryam alayhi salam, when she she had a vow of silence, because when she took Jesus Christ back to her family, she was told in advance, when you see people, don't talk. Uh, she carried her own lawyer on her, between her arms, and that's considered sound, not fasting, abstinence from food or drink and what have you. But it was abstinence, sound, not talking, abstaining from talk, from speech, from speaking. It has been narrated that one of the companions of Abu Hafs al-Haddad censored the world and its people. So he said to him, "You have shown that you should have what you should have concealed. Do not sit with us anymore. Know that hiding worship is only difficult in the beginning. When it becomes normal, one's nature becomes familiar with the pleasure of intimate conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in private. Whenever there is an assault of an occasion for ostentation, its treatment is that you renew in your heart that which is deeply was deeply rooted therein before. The realization that you are subjecting yourself to the loathing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the inability of people to benefit or harm you. Until this produces an aversion to whatever calls to ostentation. Furthermore, whereas desire calls to responding to ostentation by beautifying deeds and rejoicing in them, aversion calls to repelling and turning away from it. And the latter is more powerful. If your aversion becomes strong enough to prevent you from relying upon ostentation, and you continue in your previous state, neither increasing nor decreasing, without falsely displaying the action or spreading news of it. Then you have repelled any sin and are not responsible for any more than that. As for repelling thoughts and repelling one's nature from inclining to people's acceptance, this is not included in moral responsibility. The most that one is responsible for is to dislike ostentation and to refuse to answer its call. Displaying acts of obedience as an example and hiding them out of fear of ostentation. It is permissible to show acts of obedience in order for people to take them as an example and to encourage them. If one's intention is correct and there is no ulterior desire contained in it. The sign of this is that a person appreciates when the people follow the example of one of his peers, while he himself meets the requirements as a source of encouragement, and informs that a person's reward for acting in secret is like his reward for acting openly, then he does not desire showcasing. On the other hand, if his inclination is for himself to be the most followed, therein is the call to ostentation, because if he were seeking happiness for people and their salvation, it has already happened through their following of another, and he has missed out on nothing except the opportunity to show himself. It is likewise permissible to conceal acts of disobedience and sin, however, with the condition that a person's aim is not for it to be believed that he is pious, but rather that he is not a sinner. There is no harm in a person rejoicing over the concealment of his sins and being upset about their exposure. This is either joy over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's concealment of him or joy over agreeing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command, for He subhanahu wa ta'ala certainly loves the concealment of acts of disobedience and forbids being open about them. Like this is like a trend in the West for quite a few years. People go on camera, live on camera, broadcast. Some of these channels are seen all over the world, and they start basically giving details about their sins, their private lives, and no shame at all. And not only the West. When I say the West, it's just like it's too much now. Uh, uh, there is an Arabic channel. It's German, but it's an Arabic channel. DW TV, the Jafar talk. I think it's promoting. It is promoting vice in the Arab world. It is promoting. It's by interviewing those people who commit all these kinds of sins and speaking about committing the sin as a human right of freedom and what have you. That's really a direct promotion of sin. Alternatively, it is due to a dislike of censure and being hurt by it. This is not unlawful, but rather necessitated by human nature, What is prohibited is for a person to rejoice in people's praise of him on account of his worship, for indeed that is like a payment being taken for worship. A person may also fear being targeted with some badness if his disobedience is known, or he may be ashamed of its manifestation, and shame is not ostentation, although it could be mixed with it. As for abandoning an act of obedience due to fear of ostentation, there is no justification for it. Al-Fudayl bin Iyad said it is from ostentation to abandon a good deed due to fear of ostentation. As for performing good deeds for the sake of people, this is associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, a person should act and be sincere, except if the deed relates to the creation, like the judiciary, governance, or preaching. If he knows about himself that after delving into the deed he will be unable to control himself, but will rather incline to the cause of desire, then it is obligatory for him to turn away and run. This is like what many of the pious predecessors did. As for prayer and charity, a person should not abandon them unless the intention to worship is not present in the first place, but is instead the intention of pure ostentation. In that case, his deed is not valid and he should leave it. As for something that he does habitually, then a group attends, and so he fears for himself ostentation. He should not abandon the deed. Rather, he should continue with his worship and strive to repel the motivation of ostentation. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll read the epilogue at the end of these, because we are done with the previous 10, meaning completing 30 thus far so we're done with the part 3, and there's an epilogue, and it's quite lengthy, so I don't think that we'll move to part 4 tomorrow, but we'll just try to read the epilogue. I hope that we'll be able, because it's quite long. Until tomorrow, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.